You guys ready to talk about some tennis? That's it. That's my intro. That was really stupid, but I'm Amanda, you're watching Swell Entertainment, and today we are talking about the US Open, the quarterfinals / semifinals, and the finals. I only went to the final 3 days of the Open because I am a businesswoman. I do have to be semi-responsible so that I can continue to bring you copious amounts of content at an unhinged nature, okay? I can't do that if I'm spending all my money to spend 3 weeks in New York. I was gonna be like, oh, what's the US Open? So how do you describe the US Open? It's a tennis tournament. If you've seen Challengers, the US Open is the reason that the plot of Challengers happens. So really, the US Open tagline should be, we're the reason Challengers happen. The tagline for the US Open seems to be tennis, it's the healthiest sport. According to my friend who actually watched the actual broadcasts of the matches that I was at, that was superimposed onto the court. And it was something that the head of the US Open kept saying during all of the trophy ceremonies. Play tennis, it's the healthiest sport, or something like that. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if you can just make statements like that, but it sounds fairly harmless as far as a definitive statement goes, but I just would like a check on that, like if it's the healthiest sport. Have I ever been to a tennis match? Not really, but something that I find very interesting about a lot of sports, because I'm someone that I love live sports. There's a lot of sports that I will not watch like broadcasted, but attending sports matches and things like that, that's where I love attending live sports, okay? And I don't necessarily need to understand the sport going into it. And tennis is one of those things where I do think you can pick up what's going on watching a match or two. By the end of the first set of the women's doubles that I watched, I pretty much was getting quite a bit of an understanding of what was going on and like how the rules worked and things like that. So that's pretty helpful. But I should also note, before I came here to New York, I am now in New York. I'm now in the fashion district for Fashion Week. But before I came out to New York for the US Open, I actually dragged my friends with me to COSM Los Angeles. COSM is now, at the time of me recording this, getting a lot of attention because they finally worked out their NFL deal. And so people were showing videos from their Texas location of a touchdown and everyone, and how it looks like the players are literally running into the crowd, okay, with their incredible cameras that they have. But on September 3rd, they were showing the quarterfinals at COSM Los Angeles. And so I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna go to the US Open. You guys should come with me. I didn't say you should come. I made them come. I made a group chat. I said, yes, you're all being dragged to watch tennis with Amanda. Come along. Okay, so we got to go and watch. And honestly, one, the seats were better than what I actually had at the Open. I was in nosebleeds. If there's anything that I would like to impart on you, if you were thinking about attending the US Open ever in your life, the moment tickets are announced, just get them, because we weren't sure if I was going to end up coming out or not, my team and I. And so we waited probably too long until like right before the end of August to actually buy my tickets for the last 3 days of matches. And we got as close as we could get without selling a kidney. I was basically in the nosebleeds the entire time. So if I were to do this again, I probably would have just bought tickets when I first looked at them because they were much more affordable at the start. Whatever matches you think you may want to go to, just buy the tickets. Attending COSM, it was $265 for a booth that included tickets for 8 people. Where the cameras are set up is where you can't get tickets unless you are spending an arm and a leg. Yes, $265 is a lot of money for 4 or 5 hours of tennis in a bar, basically, but the access and the view and the camera quality, the broadcast, the cameras were just running the entire time we were in there. So we didn't just watch like them warming up. We watched the ball kids practicing. We watched them do like kids playing tennis, where it was like a little tennis thing that they were doing. We got to watch that, you know, because the cameras are just going. We got to watch people walk in and take selfies. The cameras were such good quality that we could literally see people's text messages. Like I got literal videos of me standing next to someone texting because the quality was that good of the cameras. Obviously, the videos that are coming out for the Texas location, like those are angles that you wouldn't be able to see. You wouldn't be able to pay for those types of seats unless you were on the team. I'm wondering really if this is the future of sports viewing, is things like COSM, because we're finding that live sports are something that we're getting increasingly more expensive. For example, I'll tell you all my ticket prices for the tickets and matches that I went to. They're not cheap. And I was in nosebleed seats. They were resale tickets, so I don't know what they were actually costing at, but obviously it's someone reselling things. I think pretty much all the tickets I got were resale tickets. I had tickets for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so on Friday, I had 2 tickets for the same day. Thankfully, I can go through my Apple Wallet. So these were all done through Ticketmaster. Yeah, so this is women doubles and the men's semifinals, the first one. This was $215 plus $10 in fees, plus $19.09 taxes. All right, standard ticket type. It was probably a resale. It doesn't actually tell me on here, but that's my guess. The match started at 12. The doors would open at 11. Walk in, and the grounds of the actual open itself are pretty nice. Your tickets do get checked twice at the event. My bag was only checked one of the days. This is something I have noticed as well, that I'm clocking more and more. If a guy is the security guard, they won't check my bag. If it's a woman, they'll check my bag. I assume because they know what women can fit in their bags. And most men don't. There are certain sections of the stadium that I cannot get into, okay? So if you are in the hundreds to 300 zone, which is where I was, you cannot get into the mezzanine and the box area, which is annoying because they were selling chicken nuggets with caviar that my friend was like, how do you justify this for a video? Okay, it was like $100, okay? And for a video, several TikToks, I probably could have made that work. But they were not in a space that I could access. Devastated, frankly. That's the insane content I would love to make, okay? But there's certain things that you can't get access to, certain spaces that you can't get access to. This is for safety and for people paying money and things like that. This is one of those fancier type of events, you know? It's always interesting because there's certain events and certain things where it's like, yes, there's accessibility, but it's always interesting to see the thing that I see that Formula One gets a lot of flack for, seeing that, applicable to a lot of other sports like, say, tennis, with the hoity-toity nature of things. And there is obviously not that as well, but it is the nature of the US Open, I would say, is there is an element of hoity-toityness. I'm going to keep saying it. So there is also a level of you don't get to come here because you didn't spend enough money. There's a lot of things like that in certain spots. But the actual park itself, outside of Arthur Ashe Stadium, they have giant screens, and by the finals day, there was a bunch of seats set out so that you could go and sit and watch it on the big screens. I do think there was a general admissions grounds ticket. I did not have one of those. I did want a seat so I could watch the match itself. Lots of food options. Some are more affordable than others, but most of it is not very affordable. I started doing a little series on Instagram stories where I would share the food I was buying, how much it was. It's not going to be cheap. I did see some people bring in their own food, but I don't know how much of that was allowed, so I don't know what was the what there, what the deal was there. Something I did think was interesting is that they allowed a lot of really high quality cameras. I saw a lot of people with a lot of big deal cameras. So if you want to bring in a camera, that's allowed, it seems. And then I did see no wireless mics were allowed, but that was for broadcasters more than anything, I think, to not interfere with the live broadcast, which I think is fairly much the norm these days because they don't want your mics interfering with anyone else's mics for a broadcast when this is such a broadcast heavy event. The Amex fan experience was something that was advertised quite a lot. So that one, the fan experience itself, the ground floor, anyone could get into that. They had glow tennis, free tennis balls that were customized. I never got in line for that because I just didn't have time. There was a couple other spaces as well. They had real actual tennis where you could play and practice and things like that. But the glow tennis was the AI one, I think, or whatever, where it's just a virtual thing. I don't know. There was a couple of different deals for the Amex cards, including the Amex radio, which we're going to talk about in a second. The Amex lounge on top, which is the balcony area, and that had its own little space for buying the Polo Ralph Lauren collection for the US Open. Basically everything that was downstairs except for the personalization of the tennis balls, little things. La Roche-Posay was up there as well. They were giving out free samples. I got a lot of free sunscreen from them this weekend, which is nice. There was quite a lot of the official US Open collection stores and US Open essential stores, which I do like. I do like that there wasn't just one standard merch spot. It was quite a few different ones. They all had the same stuff for the most part. The big one had a jewelry setup and things like that, so there was a few extra things. But for the most part, that was really what there was. Most of the smalls and mediums of most of the gender neutral stuff sold out very, very quickly. So I really didn't buy anything from them. And then I got this hat on the final day because Chase, they had different days. Friday was Chubb Day. Saturday, I don't remember what day it was. Sunday was Chase Day. And so they gave us free hats, which was really nice. I do like that because the hat that I wanted was the mint green one and it sold out. So I couldn't go get it. So that's a bummer. There was a couple little pop-ups on the sides when you first came into the US Open Park area. There was the Amex spot where you could get your radios. Okay, they had the Amex radios again. I've talked about these previously at the F1 Grand Prix for Las Vegas. These are from a company that basically Amex then just like pays to have their branding on and to be the ones to distribute them and everything. And these are something that I thought was interesting. I do think there's a bigger interesting thing here about like e-waste from live events like this, because I love the radios. I hold on to mine, especially when events like this where I don't walk away with a lanyard. I do hold on to the headphones because for me it's like a lanyard, like it literally was on a lanyard. I can stick it on my lanyard holder when I get home, you know, and then it adds to my yearly collection of unhinged nature. But it's something where it's like, because it's attached to your ear, I don't think you can reuse them, but then they asked for people to return them. So I would love to know what the recycling process is for this, because each night I would leave, I would take video clips of the piles and piles and piles of these. By the final 2 days, okay, like if I had waited till Saturday to get mine, they would have been gone. They were gone. And basically you had to have an Amex card to get these. You would scan it, they would scan it, and then you would get one radio, okay? And it like hooks onto your ear. You could flip it back and forth so you could wear it on either side. And basically what you are hearing is the broadcast, the one that they are choosing for that frequency. There are different ones, I believe, for F1, it was Sky Sports. I listened to it because I hated the on-site commentators. For the Open, there is no on-site commentary. It is just, you know, the chair ump is what you're hearing, and then the crowd. So to hear the broadcast, I think it may have been ESPN, I don't know. It does sound like what they were saying was matching what my friend was watching on the broadcast at home, so I don't know exactly off the top of my head which one it was. But like, that is something that is I personally like, as someone who likes watching the sport but also likes hearing commentary, even though I don't think the commentary was that compelling. Sometimes they would just say things to say things. Oh, also apparently Taylor Fritz's fans are called Fritzies. I don't know how I feel about that. And I'm not even really a fan of Taylor. I'm not really a fan of any of these people. Really? I'm intrigued. You guys are insane athletes. Like, this does seem exhausting as a sport. The matches went long. You could always tell, like, okay, who has worked on their cardio, who is not, who has had better recovery time, who is not. I love seeing those different, the variation of that in different athletes. It's always interesting to me. All incredible athletes, frankly. So great job, everyone. Oh, throughout the park, aside from like the major stadiums where they are playing, there is also the other courts. Those are all marked on the matches, and those are where like the juniors things are competing as well. You can go and watch those. For the most part, you don't really need seats for that. You just kind of go and watch. That was my understanding at the very least, is that you can just kind of go and watch. It's free, it's open seating. That was fun. That was really cool to see. Those are right in the sun though, so that does sound awful. So I only stayed for those for a little bit, and then obviously I was there for the semifinals and the finals for the most part, and the doubles finals. What I thought was interesting is that during the doubles finals, when I went into the stadium, because I did have a seat for those times, they said it was open seating. So during the doubles matches, I don't know if it's because it wasn't like the title match or something like that, I don't know, they just kind of let us sit wherever, like as long as we were still in our section. So like I couldn't go down to like the box seats or anything and go sit down there, but I could sit in the 100 sections, even though my seat was not in the 100 sections. They didn't really care. So I thought that was interesting. And then they would just be like, okay, please go to your assigned seat. Like they would literally put it up on the screen like, before the next match, please return to your assigned seat, or go to your actual assigned seat, which I thought that was interesting. I guess just because there were less people in there, so I guess you could just have us wherever. The actual matches themselves. Okay, the chair umpires. Y'all are unintentionally hilarious. Some of you have better unintentional comedic timing than others, but do you know how funny it was on multiple occasions to hear someone chanting something, and then chair umpire just goes, "Thank you. Players ready." It sounds so stupid when I explain it like that, but it was genuinely, I giggled every single time. Like, it was so, like, they, shut up, please. Like, you might as well have just said that. It was so good. Some of them would just say quiet, please, but when they would just say thank you, that was mainly during the semifinals, I would say. Because for the most part, there's a lot of self-policing in tennis crowds that I've witnessed, actually. On the rowdier days, like, the people that would be telling people to be quiet, for the most part, would be people around them. Because it is a very, obviously, intensive sport. There is cheering and gasping and things like that, but it's much more like, when the ball is in play, shut up. We're going to 5. We're going to 5. The one time where I would say people were genuinely getting rowdy, where I was like genuinely surprised by the difference, was the men's finals. That was the one time where like, I was like, wow, this is like noticeable. Like, you don't realize how different the crowds are until you start witnessing like the actual rowdy nature of certain crowds. Rowdy is not the word, I should say that, because rowdy, when I say rowdy, you're thinking that someone's like gonna elbow me in the face because they're so excited, you know, like that's not what I'm talking about at all. Or rowdy where it's like you think at any moment someone's gonna throw a beer down and start swinging at someone. That's not what I mean. That's baseball and football. Or even boxing matches, I would say, is a whole other ball game. Like I'm used to that more, so like to see a crowd like this that is is fascinating. But during the finals match between Fritz and Sinner, it would be much more, I would say the baseline level of volume was much louder. Taylor Fritz is not going to watch this, but someone loved calling him Tyler. Let's go, Tyler! Like a lot. He was having a good time. He was rooting for Taylor. There would be people who would be yelling during the match, and people around them would start being like, shh. Like people would shush, telling people to shut up. Back and forth, like I said, self-policing, but it would just be much more rowdier, much more gasps, a lot of people yelling out when things weren't out. But I will be honest, from the nosebleed sections, the ball looks out way more than it actually is, unless we just have a better view. But I don't think we obviously don't have a better view because of the jump, but because we're looking down for the most part, the ball looks to be out more than I guess it would be. I guess that makes sense. But I guess if they keep the ball in play, I don't know what the situation is there. So I'm still learning, okay? Oh, the ball kids. I don't think you guys pay them. I don't think they're paid. I don't know if it's like you get to attend the Open for free. I don't know what the situation is with that. I hope you pay them though, because these kids were hustling. It was something that when we watched the semifinals and we watched Tiafoe's quarterfinals to make it to the semifinals, when we found out he was going to be playing Fritz at Cosm, there was a moth or something that landed on the court, and then the ball kids had to come and grab it, and then they were all like smiling so big. And it was something that obviously I couldn't see from where I was sitting here. But when we were watching at Cosm, like these kids are running around with the fullest grins. They're so happy to be there. They're so excited to be helping. They're so excited to be near these players. They're sprinting, like they were hustling. These kids run out to get the ball, run back. I'm glad they have pads for their knees because these kids are tucked down. My friend asked, like, why are they crouching down like that? Like, why don't they just let them stand? And I'm like, well, I mean, it's easier to not get hit by a ball if you're crouched down. Like, it's easier to be protected and things like that. For the kids that are nearby on the side of the court versus the kids that are at the end of the court, they're all standing. I don't know. I think they should be paid. I'm hoping their cost and food and all of that was at least covered. I would assume so, at the very least, because those kids were booking it. So during the actual finals matches is where I would say it was like obviously all the pomp and circumstance of like an actual sporting event that you might be used to is where I would see this. Not to say that it wasn't there for the other ones, but it wasn't there in the same way for that it was for the finals for the women's and the men's. What I did like, I don't know if this was intentional or if this is just something that they did. They had a woman perform the national anthem for the women's finals. And then for the men's finals, they had a man perform for God Bless America. And I don't know, I just thought that was nice little detail, you know, like celebrating different types of artists and things like that. I think that's great. And they also really put an emphasis on the sign language interpreters that were performing with them. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, and then we have a sign language interpreter here as well off to the side. It's like, no, performing alongside them at the same time, which I don't know. I like that. I know some people get weird. It's like, well, it shouldn't be a big deal. We should just have sign language performers or interpreters there and things like that. And it's like, but I do think there's an artistry to, you know, sign language interpretation when it comes to music as well. And I think that there's nothing wrong with like highlighting the fact that there is a rhythm and performance in that as well. I think that's really nice. So I like that. So I had a ticket for the first part of the day, and then I had to have a second ticket for the semifinals alone, which I thought was interesting considering one, it's all in one day. It's all in the same stadium, but also it's like they're both semifinals matches, you know, like if it was like, I guess I could understand if it was like two different types of semifinals, like it was like the women's semifinals and then the men's semifinals, but they were both the men's semifinals on the same day. So why not put those together? Why not just have one ticket? I had tickets to both, buy different seats for both. So basically what they did is they had us all leave the stadium and we could either stay out on I think they said the promenade, the concourse. We could have left the stadium, but I basically was just able to stay on the outside of the seat space, you know, on the ledge where all the food is and everything. And I walked around there for a little bit until they let us in before, you know, Tiafoe versus Fritz. I get cutting off alcohol at a certain point, but they didn't seem to do that. There's this thing called the honeydews at the US Open. My understanding is that it makes such an obscene amount of money that it basically covers the cost of the Open, is my understanding. It's a $23 Grey Goose cocktail, basically. I don't drink, I didn't get one, but it's something that they were selling them constantly, okay? And so it was interesting to me that then inside the Arthur Ashe Stadium, they would shut down the food spots after the matches, where, like, I get it. Some of the matches ended, like, the Fritz Tiafa one, I didn't get out of the stadium till, like, what, 11:30? I made it back to my hotel. I walked at, like, midnight, okay? So I get that at that late, close down all the food stands, okay? But, like, for some of the afternoon ones, like, they would open the food stands really late, or they would close them super early after the matches or during the matches even. And it's like, I get if you want to clear people out, if you're that obsessed with getting people cleared out, but, like, that's just extra money. I'm assuming you don't want to pay people to, like, keep those open or anything like that, but, like, I don't know, some people want a pizza for the walk back, you know? Like, just let people get a pizza. It just, some were open, some were not, you know? Some people, like, they this braided pretzel thing, I had 3 of them. They were only good one time, okay? But, like, to walk back to my hotel, I would have liked a big thing of a pretzel to walk with. No, I couldn't get one. Devastated. Saturday night, they did have an after party fan fest. I did go. It was $45. That started at 9, doors open at 8. I went in at 8. I hung out for a little bit. I was cold, so I left. Music started like 10 minutes late, and I was like, that's my limit. I'm gonna go. And I walked to the pickup spot for Lyft. That was it. I didn't stay. You know what? And that's the value, okay, of going places alone. You don't have to stay around when you don't want to hang out somewhere. The women's finals, great match. Lots of funny little moments in there. There was a few instances where I was just like, ooh, funny. The women make funnier sounds. I don't care. It's fun. You guys have better grunts than the guys, in my opinion, which is someone who has the sense of humor sometimes of a 12-year-old boy is very funny to me. Some decent rallies in there too. I really like watching the rallies because I'm just like on the edge of my seat, like who's gonna get it? Who's gonna get it? Who's gonna fumble? Who's gonna fumble? Who's gonna fumble? Like, it's so good. I do love a good rally. That's good tennis. I basically was just like, I know I keep bringing up challengers, but I was basically just Zendaya this whole time. Like, I just want to watch some good tennis. Like, that's all I wanted to see. It's like, who are you rooting for? I don't really care. I just want to watch good tennis. It'll come to me in the moment who I'm rooting for. Let me go through the rest of the costs so that we have them. So for the actual semifinals, this was one match. This was $325 and fees of $53.63. Men's doubles final and women's final. This was $275. Fees, $10. Tax, $24.42. All of these are in the 300 sections, by the way. The Fan Fest was $40, $3 in fees, $3.55 for tax. And then for the men's finals, this was $600 with fees of $99. For nosebleeds. This is why I hate buying resale tickets. I knew I was thinking about coming to the Open and I just waited too long. That's on me. These were all bought August 25th. But I'm glad I went. I really did have a good time. I really enjoyed myself, even going alone. Usually I try and make friends at these events. Not the vibes for that. I'm sure I could have found someone. I made more friends with people at my hotel that also happened to be going to the Open than I did actually like talking and making friends at the Open or anything like that. But there was a lot of people who were like going in groups, going with their partners, going with groups of friends and things like that. I no doubt there were people that were alone, but like, I don't know if they were just not the chatty type or whatever. I don't know. I tried to talk to people. It was not working out. It is what it is. I had a good time regardless because I have fun with myself. Am I going to become a tennis pro? Probably not. Will I pick up tennis? Yes. Would definitely like to see watching tennis on a broadcast now compared to, you know, COSM and also attending a match. I'm sure it's something like baseball. I love watching baseball in person. I love attending baseball games. It doesn't even matter if they're not my team or not because I don't really have a team. I'm Angels by geographic location of being born. Dodgers because my grandmother had like the largest Dodgers collection ever at one point. But like, I am not like an Angels or a Dodgers fans, not really. But I do like attending games. But watching games on a broadcast, I don't like all that much. So I'm not sure how I would feel about watching them tennis match. But I'll try watching tennis on a broadcast. We'll see if you guys can fall back into the loophole that motorsports and hockey fell into, which I'm like, I don't really care. I want to watch this regardless. We'll see. But that's going to be it. Have you ever been to the US Open? Have you heard about the US Open? Are you annoyed that I went to the US Open knowing very little about tennis? Let me know. Comment down below. Reminder that I stream on Twitch. Reminder that Swell Entertainment is now available on Spotify. Reminder to use code SWELL for 10% off on gamer subs. Shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting me on channel memberships. If you'd also like to become a channel member, you can go ahead and click the join button down below. Like someone on social media, that'll be all up here, and that's going to have all the day. Goodbye. What's the Challengers theme again? That's not it.
Thank you, Adira, Amy, Andrew, Ayana, Cameron, Donnie, Elliot, Freya, Jeffrey, Jenny, Literal, Mae West, Michael, Nathan, Oz, Palace, Qwerty, Robert, Tasha, Tenzin, Thomas, Timothy, Winters, Wink.